Hello everybody and welcome to the Hilltop Pillbox in Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada. And this video is just a quick introduction to the map of Global War 1936. And boy, it is a beautiful map. It is just a monster. Just going to do a quick flyby here of the entire map. Some neat things that you will see is that Antarctica actually has some land that is affiliated with particular nations. You got the Brits, the Argentinians, the Germans, Norwegians, the Australians, the French. It's more Australians. But just a gorgeous map. And I didn't want to throw pieces on it yet because it'll just be a little more difficult to see some of the things I want to talk about here quickly. As you can see, though, very vibrant colors. There's no real muted tones here. Everything is nice and bright. And some things that are familiar are still here, but there are some things that you'll say, hey, where are those things? And it's because as they developed the game, obviously, they said, hey, we're going to take this out, we're going to add this. And you do need to know that there are many expansions that are already made, and some are in the works for this game. And you'll see some amazing things. I also just want to grab some charts here. And these are very good quality. Alright, this is the... I don't even know what this is called. It's kind of like a plastic. So it's a thick quality plastic. It's not going to warp on you, and if someone spills a drink on it or something, just wipe it off. So, and it's got everything on there. And I suspect, like most Axis and Allies games, as you get to know the units, you might not need them as much. But there are a lot of little upgrades. Even with the attackers here, we can see the mountain infantry, marines, and then there's advanced everything, because tech is a big part of this game, and I will show that to you right now. Here is the tech sheet. Move those over there. So this is the tech chart, and the tech chart is very, very simple. In fact, it's so simple the directions are one-lined. Okay, you're going to pay a couple of IPPs. You roll 1d12, you get the number listed or higher, you get that breakthrough. And so you see the number listed or higher. Let's just look at the advanced mechanized. See, Germany's already got the first stage done. And when you get a stage done, you just put your roundel on the box. And these are permanent. That's on there. And then stage 2, stage 3, and then complete means you have it. Alright, and there are some all sorts of neat things here. These are explained in great detail in the book, but another kind of a plastic. I think you can probably hear that on the video. And then, of course, you're going to have your IPC chart, where you can just track everything for your money, but you can also track the date, because we're starting in July 1936. Now, at this point, I'm also going to tell you that they do have a setup for 1939 that you can start. You see the World War II there, okay? And the 1936 is pre-war, where none of the major powers are in conflict, per se. Yes, we know that the Condor Legion was bombing the tar out of the Spanish, and the Italians were doing their thing down in Ethiopia, Abyssinia, but no one had formally declared war as major powers. So there's a lot of things that can happen as you lead up to the historical opening of World War II with the German invasion of Poland. That could look a lot different in this game, so that's very exciting. You got 3 years. Essentially 6 turns. I'll just head back to this. Each year is divided up into 2 phases. January to June, and then July to December. And there's some rules about winter and summer and such. And again, folks, this game is replete with optional rules, and you will love some. Some you're going to say doesn't work for our group, and others you might even get some house rules going. But this is a spicy meatball. I would highly recommend that you don't throw in every optional rule to start. I would highly recommend that you just do the out of box and maybe a couple of rules here and there. But if you throw in too many, the synergy between all of them is beautiful, but you just might not think of a few things as you're doing it, and you might forget some key rules at certain moments. So maybe until you're a little bit more comfortable with it, play out of box and maybe just a couple, and I think your enjoyment will go way up because you won't be headed to the rule book to see how this works with that. And then here we have the production chart again. It's got that. I gotta look up what that is, because it's a really neat plastic. But I pointed this out in my 36 introductory video, and this is just how things get built. It takes up to 4 stages to build some of the big things, and then other things go down. If you don't see the other stuff, it's because this is just ships and facility production. Okay, so tanks and planes and infantry and artillery and such, that's not such a big deal. You can just build those. But this is for ship and facilities. These are things that took a lot more time, a lot more man hours, and so they just want to make sure that there is some accuracy in these sorts of constructs. The transports, the destroyers, the subs are quick builds. Okay, but everything else is going to take a couple of turns. So you pay a little bit of money each turn to build certain things. Don't have the cost in front of me, I'm afraid, but for instance, the battleship, if it does cost 20, well, that would be $5 per turn that you would build. All right. And the neat thing is, at the start of the game, in the setups, 439, some of these, I think maybe in 36 as well, is you will have some units on here, some facilities on here for the different nations. And that's another thing that you can fidget with if you think that somebody has found a way to exploit things. You can perhaps put some units on here that will help. So maybe if you're saying by turn 3 Sea Lion is happening every single turn or every game, we want to stop that. Well, maybe the Brits can put some stuff here, and put a couple cruisers, maybe carrier, and have that maybe help them out. They do start, I believe, with a battleship on here in one of the setups. And again, it's your choice. If something's on there and you're saying, you know what, I don't care if the Royal Navy has another battleship, I'm going with my Air Force, then you can choose to just leave it there. If you don't pay the money and it's in box 4, it just stays there. It doesn't go anywhere. All right. So really nice components here. They're going to last forever. They're going to outlive me. So you definitely get your money's worth when you buy this game. Comes with the map and all that. A couple of things I am going to point out very quickly, and then we'll move on to putting some units on the board and running through the convoys. All right, so you got your convoys. These are the white dotted lines, and they have the names of the different convoys. You got your Gibraltar, London. Here you got your Cape Town, London. All right. You got your New York and Rio. Okay. And it's a really neat way to do convoying in this game. I really like it. It's actually quite simplistic once you get the hang of it. But you can convoy anywhere along these lines to the maximum amount of whatever's on the line for each nation. So, for instance, this is the East African line. It goes from Cape Town, and it runs up here, and then it splits off goes up to Cairo or heads over to here. And if you look, you know, it's each worth 1 for the French and the British. So you can convoy that, and you can convoy here the British or the French or the Dutch. Now the thing is that this money is not part of the IPP production of each country, and that's something very important to note, is that that's not included. So if we say that Britain makes 30 bucks, that has nothing to do with this 3. Okay, so if it's not being convoyed, they still get 30 bucks. When it gets convoyed, at the end of the aggressor's turn, if the convoy, oh sorry, at the end of the, no, during the aggressor's turn, when they say I'm convoying, and if there's no dispute to that, then that convoy gets, or that country will lose the $3, so or whatever the number is. So the British here, if they're being convoyed on the Indian Ocean line, they would lose $3. All right, and it's immediately taken right out of your hand. It's kind of similar to bombing raids in certain iterations of A&A. The other thing, very quickly, mountains. You can see that there's mountains here. That adds defense +1. Cities also have a defense of +1. They don't stack for the rules there. So Nanking is not in the mountains, so defense would get your +1. Hong Kong is in the mountains and a +1, but you just get to take the highest modifier that you have in each case. I'll talk more about that as I do up a larger rule set. There are some impassable regions here. Don't know if it'll come into play very much, but it's very accurate. So going from Northern Australia to Southern Australia is no longer possible. And of course, your Himalayan mountains are impassable. So going from Xinjiang here to Turkmenistan, can't do it. Of course, we all, you know, the desert we all know and love, impassable, and that's, you can't fly over it, you can't do anything, okay? So Egypt here is a bit of a bottleneck, right? Only Egypt comes around through. In many of the other games, you can get through from other territories, but no, just through Egypt. And if you look here, Cairo is not considered a city. Cities all have, as we look at Istanbul, the curved line. As we look at Rome, it's curved lines. Gibraltar is a victory destination as well. So there's that consideration. Again, folks, this is just a really quick flyby. I think that was all I wanted to tell you about the map itself. It is gorgeous, though. I really hope that the color is coming through, that the lighting is sufficient to show you how beautiful this map is. And I tell you, I'm really looking forward to getting this thing up and running for you. And until that time, just going to pause it here, and we're going to get it all set up. And we're going to show you the 1936 version to start, and then we will talk about that, and in a later video I'll show you the 1939 World War II setup. Alright, I'll be back as soon as I can. Thanks. Okay, moving on in our little discussion here on 1936. Here we have the 3 different factions. So you've got your Axis, Germany and Italy and Japan. You have your allies. You guys can see what those guys are. And then you have the Comintern, which is the Soviet Union and Communist China. So those are the 3 factions that are vying for the victory here. Well, how do you get a victory? Well, you can make the other guys say uncle and you win. But the game could go right to the end. And what is the end? Well, the end is always the same. The end is always July 1945. Okay, we're just going to make that the end of the game. Where you start, though, is you have some options. Now, they do have a 42 version that hasn't been put out yet, but it is, and there are a lot of other neato little things coming along, so we'll wait for that. But they've thought ahead and printed it on there. But we have the 1939, where WWII started, and then you've got the 1936, the pre-war. So if you want a longer game, you'll obviously start in July 1936 and then just move one spot for each full round. So there's 2 rounds for each year. So you could have up to 18 rounds, which is quite possible. So at the end of the 18 rounds, you're going to add up the number of victory cities. And the victory cities are simply the capitals of the countries. And they're listed right here in 3.2. Okay, they're right there. But the problem is you can also lose. Ooh, pardon me. You can also lose some victory points. You lose objectives because for each land territory you have that has been surrendered, you lose 1 IPP. Lose 1 victory point, pardon me, for every territory that's worth at least 1 IPP. So if we look here at, say, Far East Command, which usually is getting the stuffing kicked out of it, you know, Burma, Bengal, Benares, hope I said that right, Madras, Bombay, New Delhi, they would all cost a victory point. And FEC doesn't have the ability to make victory points very well. And we're going to look at those in a second. But if you look at the Punjab and Kashmir, those are not worth anything, so if the enemy trickled into there, that wouldn't cost them. So what are we talking about with these victory objectives? Well, each of the 3 factions have up to 18 objectives that they can get. I'll just zoom there and then I'll come back. You can just take a look at those on pause if you want. And they're all listed on the individual sheets. So this is the back of the US sheet. It's got the victory objectives listed there. Each is worth 1 point. Okay, so if they're able to do that, you just add up all these points that each country gets, and there's your winner. So you might not be doing very well in the game militarily, but if you've been able to get your victory conditions met and hang on to them, and yeah, you could have a surprise victory. And we've seen it before where you know, Japan might win because they have hung on to victory cities and nobody's been able to wrest them from their control. They have nothing else on the board but things on victory cities, and they win the game. So it's similar with this game where, you know, you might not have the greatest luck with the dice or what have you, but you've been able to hold on to your victory objectives. So you'll want to keep track of the victory objectives of other nations, and those are all listed here. Here's the US, and then they're all listed here in the rule books. You can at any time, obviously, if you have a happy host, you can go through and take a look at the different victory conditions of the all the nations, and then you can see, hey, this guy here, you know, Communist China is trying to get 2 victory objectives at the end if they have no foreign troops in mainland China. So then the Japanese guy might say, wow, it's the last turn, I'm going to put a bunch of guys into mainland China here, and hopefully, you know, I'll keep him from scoring. All right. Yeah, so there you go, victory objectives. I think that's pretty much it for those, and we'll keep going in just a moment. Okay, we're going to tell you guys a little bit about the rail movement here in Global War 1936, and it's a very interesting dynamic to the game. You can see rail lines all throughout the map, and they are very, very handy, and there are some stipulations on the rail movement which I'm going to tell you about right now. It happens during the non-combat, and what happens is that you can move a number of units based on the territory that you are in. Europe is the most generous with rail movement. You can move up to 4 per nation. Alright, so for instance we have these guys here in Paris. So we have 2 men, an arty, and a tank, and they can move anywhere inside of Europe that they want. They can go as far as they need to go to get to Europe. Alright, and that's all grand. So you can scatter them, you can send them anywhere you want. Perfectly fine. Stipulation is that you have to own the territory before your turn began, and you must own everything along the entire line, right from the beginning of your trip to the end. So in this instance, the guys in Paris if they wanted to move on a rail line, you can see that the Axis are, we'll just say that they own everything. We haven't done much with tokens and whatnot. But they can move all the way to East Poland, okay, because they own the rail line. So all 4 guys could move to East Poland. And again, you could split them up, drop them off as they go along, no problem. But here's the deal. We need to get them over to the 6th Army in Stalingrad, the beleaguered Stalingrad. Okay, how do we get them there? Well, you say, hey, look, we own a rail line, goes all the way through. Why don't we just take them there? Well, because there's a different gauge of rail in the USSR, and so you'd have to transfer everything over. That takes time, and the rail stock available in the USSR is not up to the standards that they are in Europe. And so what happens is the USSR can only move 2 units per turn. Alright, same rules apply. So the Germans could only move 2 units per turn to Stalingrad. So at this time, if we look at this, they have a number of options, because Stalingrad, the 6th Army's over there, they could take this armor and move them all the way there along this rail line. Okay, they can move them all the way along. So you could do that. They could also just simply move these guys in using normal movement. And they could also take 2 of the guys in Paris and move them all the way along to, say, East Poland or Romania. And then 2 of them would have to stop because you can only take 2. So let's do that. We're going to take all 4. They're going to come on to Romania. There we go. And then the Germans say, well, we need more than that. And so they grab these guys, bring them right into Stalingrad. So Stalingrad now has some reinforcements. And the Germans say, hey, you know what, we want to make sure that we get more guys in there next time, so yeah, we'll move these 2 guys in next turn. Okay. Now, since they moved these 2 units from Romania, Tank and the Arty, they moved them in there, that takes up the 2 movement points allowed in the Soviet Union. Alright, so you can't move the 4 guys from there and move them onto the European soil and then move them there and just count them as the European movement. That takes up your USSR movement as well. So these guys can no longer fly into Stalingrad on the rail. Okay. Now, things seem hunky-dory. They've been able to reinforce. There's only a lone Russian there. It's not a big deal. But on the Soviet turn, hoorah! You got to make the noises. If you don't make the noises, you're not cool. And they take eastern Ukraine back. And so on the next turn, the Germans want to reinforce Stalingrad, and they want to do it with these men. So what they need to do is they need to somehow free up a rail line to get there, because this is Soviet territory, this is now Soviet territory, and that's where the 2 rail lines go. So we'll just say the Germans come in and they take care of that guy. That's all fine and dandy. And we'll just replace this one. Okay, so they took it. Ura, that's great. Not Ura, that's the bad thing. Mach schnell? I don't know. Anyway, so the Germans take over that. They're all fine and dandy and happy. And now in their non-com, they say, hey, we want to get these guys to Stalingrad. And they start going, and they have to stop right there, because they did not own eastern Ukraine at the start of the turn. Therefore, the rail line has not been in their hands for a complete round. And there is no other rail line. Torita doesn't have one. And we'll just say that all this is Soviet territory. So these guys would have to stop here. So they wouldn't even probably use the rail. They would just walk in. All right, because you don't want to use it. Plus, if they railed from here, that would count for 2, because there's 2 men here. That would count for 2 of the 4 European units allowed to travel on the rail. So you probably would just move them in. And then maybe they would grab a couple of guys, a couple stacks of 2 over here and bring them in. Okay? But that's how rail works. And as I said, in some of the other places, rail is much slower. But Africa's, you know, you can move guys from middle of Africa all the way up into Cairo to bulk up the forces. So there are some options. The other thing about rail is that you will have shipyards, And shipyards are where you build and repair capital ships. You need a shipyard. Naval base won't do it. And so your shipyards in a territory that have a rail line will allow you to construct your ships, but they have to be attached to a factory. All right. So, for instance, if we had a factory, we'll just make this one kind of weird here. So we have our factory in Turin, and let's say we had a shipyard down here in Taranto. Okay. You could build capital ships here. Oh, I guess that doesn't really work because of the Adriatic sitting there. Let's make this a little bit more interesting. Let's say the Germans, okay, well, here we go. The Germans have their factory here, and they built a shipyard here. Then the Germans, trailing this all the way to here, would be able to construct capital ships if they built a shipyard in Greece. Now, that's a far-fetched notion, but that's how that works. All right. Okay, so in the comments below, let me know if you need any more information on rail movement. Remember that you need to own every stitch of the rail line that you're going to move during your non-com. And yeah, there's 2 in the USSR, 2 in North America, 2 in Japan, 2 in the British Isles, and the rest of the world is 1. Okay, you can just move 1 thing. Alright, be right back. Okay, let's talk convoys. This is a very integral part to the game, and well, it's just very important to understand how this all works. So here we have a convoy zone, and we got some Japanese subs. We're going to pull them out of the way for right now. You see right here, you've got 3 convoy lines that all converge in 122. So this is going to be a very important spot because when you convoy, you can convoy any line as long as it's in the C zone you're in. So 122, you can convoy here, and you can convoy down to that money there. And if you're the Allies, you can convoy the Tokyo line for a nickel. All right. So there's some pretty hefty things going on here at 122. So I'm going to focus on that for our little tutorial. So the Japanese see this as an opportunity to cause some grief. So they're going to plant a couple subs in there. And it's a very simple thing. Now they just roll 1d6, and you're going to roll separately for each submarine. So the first submarine is going to roll, and he's going to be going up against the Indian Ocean line, trying to take money from FEC. Okay? So he rolls a d6. Now because he's a regular sub, he gets a +2 modifier. So if he rolls a 2, he'd get a 4. And then FEC rolls, and if FEC rolls less than the Japanese roll, modified roll, then the FEC has to pay that amount to the bank. Now they can only pay a maximum of that much. Alright, so they can't just get hit and hit and hit and hit. That's all they can do per turn. Okay, but the FEC are not powerless. No, 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 no. Because on FEC's turn, they have a couple of things that they could do to dissuade the Japanese from doing such convoy attacks. And I don't have the actual tokens, but we're gonna mimic them here. This is going to be escort duty. And FEC is going to have escort duty with a cruiser. And we'll say that on the UK turn, they were thinking, you know, we need to protect this convoy line. So what they're going to do is over here, UK on their turn is going to put a destroyer. Now there can only be 1 escort ship per Z-zone per country. Alright, so the UK or the FEC couldn't stack like 5 guys up in here. Only put 1. Alright, now when they do that, that helps their modifier. Alright, so they get 1 +1 per escorting surface warship on the convoy line. So subs don't help you. But here they're going to get a +1 for that and a +1 for that. So they just even the odds. But in their mind, they might be thinking, you know, that's not quite enough. We want to really make the odds better. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to do a combat air patrol, okay, called the CAP. And they say, we're going to go here for our CAP. And there's tokens for them as well I don't have. And we'll just put this guy here. We'll say he's combat air patrol. There we go. Because they don't want the Japanese coming in there and doing a combat air patrol. Well, the Japanese say we don't have to come into there because we can convoy you from here. And the combat air patrol, folks, is one space away from where you were. That's as far as you can go because you're not traveling to and fro. You are just going around in circles, right? So you can only go one C zone. But it does dissuade the Japanese perhaps from moving through because if the Japanese said, you know, we need to get into a position here because we want to go take care of the African line on the next turn, which is now going to be 2 away, this dissuades them because an aircraft is going to give you a +2 on your die roll. So you might be able to keep the Japanese from moving where they want to go on combat air patrol. Now it's important to know that there's no combat between these actual vessels and between the plane and whatnot. So even if the Japanese moved into here, there's no combat between the two. They're just modifiers on the die roll for the convoying. All right, and just taking a quick look here, there's a couple of quick things that you need to know with the convoy. You got to say you're doing it on your combat movement, and then you got all the modifiers and everything. And it says the escorting nations, units and nations with advanced anti-sub warfare make defense rolls against submarines. All right, so as long as you have ASW, you can go crazy on that. Okay, here we have the extra modifiers. So radar technology helps out, and if the aggressors end up getting an advanced submarine technology, it's +4. So that can really tilt some balance there if you're big on subs. So I'm thinking the Japanese and the Germans, to a lesser extent the Americans, might want to look at that. Coastal subs only a +1, but hey, they tried. All right, so that's it for convoying. There are with the ASW, in case you're wondering what that is, the anti-sub warfare, you actually get to roll against the submarine and try to kill it. So here is the actual rule. Okay, you get to actually make a defense roll. This isn't a defense of the convoy zone. You actually get to try to kill the sub. Okay, so if you do have subs, or you think you're going to have subs coming to get your convoy zones, maybe try to get that anti-sub warfare technology and maybe dissuade them a little bit, because you don't have to actually have any units. You know, so if I have ASW and the Japanese come in here, and we'll say that FEC has ASW, I can roll a die here. And I have to roll a 2, and it's on a D12, so it's not a sure thing, of course, but at least it might dissuade the Japanese from just running amok on your convoy lines. And you're not losing any units when you do it, because it's just an abstract ASW roll. All right. Hopefully that helps you guys out with the convoy rules. If you need to go back and take a look, yeah, you can I'll just come over here and pause, and you guys can just pause and take a look at anything that you want to take a look at there. But hopefully I've described it well enough, and you won't have any trouble when you start the convoy in 1936. All right, we'll be back right away.